I'll call the regular City Council meeting of October 21st, 2020 to order at 7 p.m. If you join me in pledging the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Copeland.
Here.
Tom Baylor.
Here.
Kathy Sherman is absent. Jeff Guard.
Here.
Melina Meyer.
Here.
Ann Schaefer.
Here.
David Allison.
Here.
David Gleason.
I'm here.
That's a quorum of council.
Any revisions to the agenda, council? Hearing none, I'll stand approved as submitted. Does council have any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications to disclose?
Clay, just I don't think it's a problem, but I think it's item number 16 on the agenda. That's my wife's grandfather, so just put that out there.
Okay, do you have a direct financial interest in the transaction?
No.
Okay, then I'm going to declare that it's not a conflict, and of course, council can appeal that if they choose. Any other conflicts to declare? Hearing none, we have communications by and petitions from visitors. Before we start, I'm just going to remind the audience that after these initial speakers, we'll have the phone line available to call in for public comment on the agenda items, and that number is 253-6202. 253-6202. Councilman Baylor.
Since we have our counsel here, could I ask a question on the disclosure conflict of interest in regards to Mr. Gleason?
Yeah.
So in this case, I don't think there's a conflict, but if the city was purchasing that land from his grandfather, which they actually did like 30 years ago, in my opinion, then it would be a conflict of interest. Am I on the right page there or no?
Yes, under your charter provision, I think that it calls into question, first of all, it's the relationship of the council member to a family member. That becomes one question. Your code is very unclear, even with the conflict of interest. You have zero guidance on substantial financial interest. What that means, how it's established, that's not in your code. So I think that you could potentially have a conflict. It certainly would be raised. If you don't, it'll be because of the relationship. That's what the argument would be, is that it wasn't the elected official. It's a member of their family.
Right. Okay. I was just curious. It sounds like we need to get that substantial interest cleared up. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought we'd take advantage of the training.
Okay, so our first guest speakers are from the Alaska Department of Health and Social Services, and I believe we have several on the line. And Heather Brannon, are you online, Heather?
I am, Clay.
Okay, would you like to introduce our guests?
Sure. So this evening we have the community engagement team from the state of Alaska here to talk to our community, our council, a little bit. This is a collaboration of folks that have gotten together to come out and speak to the different municipalities on what's going on statewide with COVID and answer questions. So as part of our group, we have Commissioner Adam Crum. We have the acting chief of the Office of Substance Misuse and Addiction Prevention, Eliza Muse. We have the Division Director of Military and Veterans Affairs, Paul Nelson, and the Emergency Program Manager for Military and Veterans Affairs, Mr. Brian Fisher. And with that, I will hand it off to Brian to go ahead and start this evening. Brian, are you there?
I am, Heather, and thank you, Mayor, and thank you, the council, for having us tonight. I wanted to take the time to give you a few updates about what's going on, talk about where we are and where we're going. And before we get started, I wanted to give Commissioner Crum the opportunity to provide some opening remarks.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Cordova, for having us. Adam Crum, Commissioner for the Department of Health and Social Services. So I just briefly want to share that we have started what's called the community engagement team. And the goal of this is to make sure we have direct contact between local emergency operations centers, elected officials, and health corporations within certain areas to make sure that we are all connected and talking, to make sure resources and or needs are being met, and also to kind of learn, through lessons learned and planning for the future. And so we're coming together just to share so we have direct contact information. If specific items come up that this group can't handle, we'll make sure it actually gets brought back out to the state EOC level and passed out. And just are making sure that we are trying to capture all information, that people know who to go to, and that as questions come up, particularly in the end of the year in regards to CARES funding and the timeline and what that looks like, that we can kind of help guide along that process. So really appreciate you guys having us.
Thanks, Commissioner. And this is Brian Fisher again. And so my day-to-day job is as the operations chief for emergency management for the state. So I've been serving as the incident commander for the state's COVID-19 Unified Command really since back in January when we first received notification of a repatriation flight from Wuhan of the State Department employees. And wanted to share first and foremost, Director Nelson and I were down presenting to you all in person a couple of years ago, and have to say, still have the same exact assessment of your community as we did then. You're really rock stars. You were out in front leading all the efforts. As a matter of fact, you're the first community that we're talking to on this with this community engagement team effort. Since the beginning of the pandemic, there was lots of confusion and uncertainty at the beginning. We didn't know a lot about the virus and what was going to happen. We knew that there were going to be quite a just a ton of needs out there for being able to protect our residents. So to that end, we stood up this unified command, and for us, what that means is it's a partnership between the health department, the military and veterans affairs department that Paul and I are part of, and the Department of Public Safety with the Alaska State Troopers. So we stood that organization up very early, and one of the first things we worked very hard on, and you guys have been great about it, was setting up a process which you can order scarce resources, personal protective equipment, and then a little bit later, testing materials and supplies through the state EOC and over to the health department so we could get those things out. We continue to do that. We envision that we're going to be in the middle of that for a long time to come. Back in the early part of the spring, we were all very concerned about what was going to happen with the fishing industry. And as you know, the governor was very supportive of making sure that we were able to conduct a safe fishery this year. And I have to commend you all, Heather and the whole incident management team. You really provided us a lot of insight early on, and your communications with the processors and fishermen in your area has been amazing. I've been on those calls on Fridays where Heather gets all the processors together and talks about what's going on in the state, talks about any needs that are out there. And it was really a great model for the rest of the state to be able to see that open, clear communications with the fishing industry to make sure that we had the right protocols in place before folks started showing up, that we conducted the fishery safely and brought those workers in and had plans in place to respond if we did have COVID that appeared. Obviously, that's happened. And throughout that entire process, I think the way the community of Cordova has come together with the city and EAC and the Alaska Clinic and the Community Medical Center has really been great. We were wanting to make sure that everybody was kind of working together at the community level, asking us for the resources that they needed with one consolidated voice, and that has absolutely been the case there in Cordova. So just wanted to put that out there to start, and I think we had a couple of things we wanted to update you all about. I'll see if Paul and then Eliza, I think, has a little bit of information to share. We want to talk about what's going on with the travel mandate changes, kind of some of the statistics we're seeing with travel testing, and then talk a little bit about what's coming down the pike for vaccines. So, Director Nelson or Eliza, if you wanted to Go ahead.
Hey, yeah, so thanks, Brian. Hey, this is Director Nelson, Mayor and council members. I don't know what more can be said. Commissioner Crum and Brian have said it. The community of Cordova, that whole area down there, you guys are truly rock stars. And as Brian said, we were down there a couple of years ago. I was not in the position I am in now. I have newly appointed to this position in July, right in the middle of this thing. And just one point, as Commissioner Crum put together this small team to already engage with the community. So we wanted to, I think the vision was to ramp that up, and that's what we're doing. And I think the great thing about this is all four of us have specific roles that we're playing, but we all have direct access to our commissioner, obviously Commissioner Crum, and direct access to the governor. And so we can all either answer questions or get the right person to answer questions. So in the example of emergency management, there's a lot of things on the money side that I deal with. But I know that if I'm asked a question, if it's an emergency operations center question, I can get it to Brian. The health question, I might be able to answer it, but I know that Commissioner Crum and his team are best to answer that. Because of this community engagement team, we have enhanced our communication with each other, and we're really here to help you all out. But one thing I did want to mention is that early on in the CARES Act funding, as that rolled out, there was an emergency management program grant supplemental that came out. And to kind of highlight what Brian said about Cordova being a rockstar community, we put that out to all the EMPC eligible communities in the state. And I will tell you, Cordova was the only community that took advantage of that. And when our program manager said, we have one community that's taken it, and I said, which community is it? He said, Cordova. I didn't ask what you were using it for. I didn't ask how you went about doing it. I just said, give it to them as much as they need, because I know they're going to use it right. You've proven that time and time again, and we thank you for your partnership, and we can hope that we can just bolster it and move forward and answer any questions and give you the assistance that your community requires. That's it, and with that, I'll turn it over to Eliza.
Hey, well, thanks so much for having us, Eliza Muse, part of the community engagement team. And I didn't know if Commissioner Crum would like to talk a little bit. So Heather, thank you so much for sending us some of the items you'd like us to cover this evening. And Commissioner Crum, I didn't know if you wanted to share a little bit about the Mandate 10 travel update.
Yeah. For the Health Mandate 10, we just recently updated, and there was specific language in there about social distancing. We actually trimmed that back from 7 to 14 days post your first negative test and arrival in Alaska, just to 5 days. Now, 5 days is the median incubation period for the virus. And when we looked at community spread in Alaska versus the chances of importing it and the benefits we've had about people actually complying and coming into the state with tests, we weighed that health risk. We actually had quite a few individuals and health workers in Alaska that have been needing to either come back, leave state and then return, or come into Alaska with temporary licenses. And this was actually one means of getting them to work a little bit quicker. And there were some particular tweaks in there, was that if you work for critical infrastructure, you now can travel under that even on your personal side. You have to follow your work plan so you can get back to work faster. And that Alaska residents who leave the state, if you return within 72 hours, you don't have testing requirements, because we had concerns and issues that were brought up about people receiving medical treatments out of state, as well as child custody exchanges and other similar things.
Great, thanks so much. This is Eliza Muse again. And Heather, I think you had asked a little bit about the airport testing data. So, pretty quick into our response to starting the first week of June. We worked to set up testing at 10 of our airports across the state, of which Cordova and Yakutat also were added. June 20th. So wanted to share a little bit about the data we have so far and kind of percent positives down through testing at all of our airports. So since the start of our testing, 340,131 passengers were screened, 106,649 total tested in the airport across all of our airport sites in Alaska, of which we've found 585 positive tests. And that's at a rate of 0.53% testing positive for our airport screening statewide. There in Cordova, starting the third week of standing up testing in June 20th, through cumulative through our week 19, we've had 302 travelers tested at the Cordova airport, and of those, the vendor we're working with has reported 2 positives, so a 0.66% positive rate there. And I guess so we also were asked a little bit about our vaccination plan, and I don't know if Commissioner Crum, you'd like to kind of kick that off, talk a little bit about the plan that was submitted to the CDC last Friday, and then we can open it up for questions from the council.
Yeah, so we have put together a plan. We had to submit to CDC our vaccination strategy plan. What this was, we put together a partnership with ANPAC, so we would actually be doing simultaneous requests from the state as well as the tribal health, make sure that there were no hiccups in the distribution of this, because at this point in time there are, I believe the number is 6 vaccines going through phase 3 trials. As they go through this, a lot of them have different rules, whether that's storage temperature, it is inoculation period on, is it 21 days, 28 days? So when we get this, whatever vaccine happens to become available, we're going to make sure we're all on the same page. As we put together our identified areas of concern in Alaskan population, the CDC is going to commence what is called, I'm getting the correct acronym, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or ACIP. And this work group will identify the groups to get first available supply. After they give their recommendations, and then the Alaska Task Force will convene to put forward recommendations on the population that actually should get first available supply of the vaccinations. So we'll work with those groups as it comes out. We are preparing the providers and coaching right now until we know what are the likely vaccines that come forward. We don't know the exact protocols, but at this point in time, we are anticipating that we will have first available vaccine before the end of this calendar year.
That's great. And I will say, too, that plan is available on our department website. And we've got 2 websites. One really aimed at a provider audience. And the other website is really for more general information. So if you, simply Google COVID-19 Alaska vaccine, you'll land right there on the general audience website, your webpage, if you're interested in reading the plan and learning a little bit more about that strategy. Well, thanks so much.
Okay, well, thank you for the update and for your outreach. And here in the audience, I just want to share our Paul Tremblay, Susie Hirschleb, Chris Bolin, Aaron Muma, Police Chief Nate Taylor, Leif Stavig, and then our city clerk and city manager and attorney, actually counsel, were all the core, the backbone of our incident management team here in Cordova, and our public works director as well, Sam Greenwood, around the corner. So appreciate the feedback and all the work that they put into the community's response. And with that, we'll open it up for questions to council, and I'll start with Vice Mayor Meyer.
I guess I just had one question, because it seems like here in Cordova we have a little bit of a spike, and from my understanding it might be more related to in-state travel. So kind of a broad question there, but is there anything in the works, or maybe a little bit more help that our community could get, or outreach? I don't know exactly what we could do, but seems like this is the biggest active cases that we've had all summer, and it's residents and maybe in-state travel and not so much the out-of-state travel.
Yeah, are you asking for help in actually managing the active cases that you have?
You know, I don't really know a good answer. Maybe just your thoughts on, you know, we did go to a higher level in our 5-level system. I believe we're at a 3. Just had a lot more active cases, and I think they're kind of related. You know, I don't know the specifics who they are, how they all got it. That's my understanding. It's a little more in-state travel and maybe relaxed in protocols. But that's just kind of what we're seeing. It's the biggest amount of active cases that we've had, and it's been residents, not so much the influx of travel that we were really on top of early on. We were worried about the fishing season, wanted to protect that. Now that that threat's kind of gone, it's more towards local residents. And I understand it's all hard, you know, it isn't fun by any means. So just kind of thoughts on in-state travel.
Yeah, that, you know, we've got a lot of different communities around the state that have put forward actually travel restrictions and or limited movement. Whenever that does happen, I don't believe that's happened in Cordova. It kind of varies in that region. I apologize, Cordova, you haven't popped up on my radar because your daily case counts haven't been there, but I don't know your active case number, so that I do apologize. Because I see 2 for the Cordova census area, but I don't get the direct number for inside. You know, as far as doing this, what we're really trying to reinforce to everybody is if you do your own kind of post-contact negotiating, understanding where you're at, keeping track of that. We're trying to make sure that we have available resources going on. One thing that, you know, the council and the emergency team should be aware of, is that HHS, the federal government, has made it very clear that at the start of this calendar year, the coming calendar year, federal resources for testing supplies is going to go away. And so we are working with all of our partners to make sure they can establish their own relationships of supply lines. We've heard from some small regions that they can't actually compete with some of the national purchases going on. So we're working it from a state side to see what we can do to actually do some bulk purchases and then distribute materials out. Okay, thank you. And, you know, I guess I just looked a little bit to our active cases. It looks like a lot of us have been recovered, but at one point I think we had 13, and that's pretty high for our population. So it's sad to hear that some of the federal resources are going to go away for testing. I think that would be important for a small community like ours.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. This is Brian Fisher. And just to add to what the Commissioner said, we certainly are going to make sure that testing continues regardless of what we're getting from the Fed. So we're working hard on that right now. But in terms of the kind of intrastate travel piece, you know, back in August, we changed the requirements for interstate travel and started making non-residents get testing out of state. And that was specifically to free up testing resources within Alaska for Alaskan residents traveling throughout the state. So we intend to keep that in place. Like the Commissioner mentioned, we do have Health Mandate 18, which allows communities to be more restrictive or have testing requirements in place for intrastate travel. For example, if folks were coming either up from Juneau or down from Anchorage, they are able to get a test at the Anchorage and Juneau airport prior to heading your way to alleviate kind of the testing burden in Cordova itself and be able to provide that extra level of protection. And I've gotten this question quite a bit, so I'll throw the answer out there now. Folks are curious about what happens come November 15th. That's currently the date when the governor's public health disaster emergency expires. When it comes to the intrastate travel and the testing that we're doing at the airports, we are going to keep that in place regardless of what happens November 15th. At least right now, the contracts go through the 31st of December, and we'll reassess those contracts kind of in the beginning of the month of December to see if we need to extend those into the winter. But I did want to assure you all and the community that we're going to keep that testing availability at our 10 airports where we're contracting for at least through the end of the calendar year. And the disaster declaration, the state one isn't going to affect the ability to have that testing continue.
Okay, thank you. And our current active case count is 7, so it was 13, but we've had quite a few of those recover. Councilman Allison.
I don't have any questions. I appreciate you all coming, chatting with us, and giving us all the support that you have and our own IMC for the job that they've been doing. Thank you.
Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, I just appreciate everybody and a comment. I think you've done a good job with the travel restrictions and your efforts testing at the airports. My wife and I have done quite a bit of traveling since January to, I think I said this before, Seattle, Michigan, and other places for life or for medical and family. So we've kind of put ourselves in the hot spots. But I think, we get, you can have all these restrictions on travel and testing and interstate traveling, but once somebody's there, it's their personal behavior. And some of these cases have been caused by the lack of following the procedures to protect yourself. Not all of them, certainly, but there has been a few. So you're never going to eliminate all of it, but I think you've done a fine job and appreciate the efforts of everybody.
Councilman Gleason.
Yeah, I don't have any questions, but I appreciate the report and for you guys calling in.
Councilman Gard.
Thank you. Yeah, where I have questions is in my mind is I understand the out-of-state travel restrictions and cautions we took to try to lessen the load of disease coming into the state to keep our local population as clean as we could. But we've now moved beyond that here with the fall surge or whatever we want to call it we've got going here, and it looks like we have more to worry about with virus loads in the state than out of the state, and it doesn't seem like we're doing that much to manage other than just talking and saying everybody should take personal responsibility. So
Appreciate
those my 2 cents.
Thank you for that. So one of the things that we are doing is we are reiterating that of 10 airports where travel testing is occurring, that they can be used for local testing hubs for Alaskans in general. It doesn't have to be for travel or even interstate travel. So an example of something that has occurred, you look at Fairbanks as a particular hotspot of the last month. So in the last 2 weeks, what we actually ended up doing is we expanded the contract for testing at the airport in Fairbanks beyond just the flight hours, make it an even broader community hub, and we stood up 2 rapid testing sites around the city while we actually put out an RFP for long-term testing. Dr. Zink and a team from our epidemiology intelligence service went up to Fairbanks, meet with leaders to kind of find out some particular concerns. But in that time frame, in the last week, we actually have cut Fairbanks' percent positivity rate from 12 down to 6. So little items like that, where those particular items and hotspots, we can go and encourage, find out what the barriers are, identify resources, and maybe it's even just shuffling what sometimes the locals are doing into a new little spot, along with some communication-focused efforts. Being a big department, we have some, push and some broadband. So if there are specific items, we can help get the messaging out through our communication apparatus. So those are some items that we've been doing. While people talk about the interstate because it's the visible aspect,
Some of these community-based pushes may not be so, which is also why we're doing this team, just to reach out to see what the concerns are and if there's anything in particular we can share you about what we've learned around the state as well. Thank you.
But without having more emphasis put on local or in-state control of the virus, we've lifted a bunch of our business restrictions and mandates for how businesses operate. We're lessening our travel restrictions, and now is when we're seeing school closures and that kind of stuff happening, and the better job we can do controlling this virus before it gets around the community so much, the more we're going to keep our schools open, our children are going to get a better education, and the effects of this aren't going to be as far-reaching timeline-wise as they are now.
Yeah, it's an interesting position. World Health Organization came out a week or two ago and actually said that economic shutdowns from the virus are actually worse than the virus itself. And so that really limits some of the tools that governments can play. When we look at this from a holistic standpoint, I'm looking at the care line, which is if people are having behavioral health issues or distress and need to reach out. We have a 22% increase in this quarter compared to the same time last year. And so there is the economic effect of those items are coming into place. So we're really trying to balance that. We're still allowed some opportunity. And the other thing is we're pulling together our influence data and trying to work with school districts and educate them. We just presented tonight as well that ages 1 to 14 in the state of ages 1 to 14 are actually less likely. You're more affected by influenza than you are for COVID. And so we're trying to find and encourage school districts in ways to do that, to encourage schools to come in, knowing then that where the risk comes into play is not the kids, it's the parents and the teachers. And that is a risk that needs to be balanced and weighed and administered by each community. But these are some of the things that we're trying to just share the information that we know of, because this is not a singular-based response, but we are trying to work on us together. And I appreciate your comment, sir.
Well, kind of what I was trying to get at here is I'm not at all advocating for any kind of shutdown. There are things we could have been doing all along. We just had a statewide mask mandate, things like that. I don't think we would have had the shutdown we've been having. I don't think we would have taken, our economy would have taken the kind of beating it's taking now. There's some common sense, smaller things we could have done to save ourselves some of the big hurdles we went through. Anyway, thank you very much. I know I sound like a naysayer, and that wasn't what I was trying to do. Thank you very much for everything you're doing, and thank you for talking to us. And I will be quiet now.
Councilman Schaffer.
Yeah, thanks so much for talking with us. Yeah, I also agree that the way for everything to get back to normal as much as possible is if there were a state level mask mandate instead of this patchwork of communities that are doing it. I mean, that is the way, I think, for, to keep our schools open and businesses open, et cetera. But on another topic, so you said there's the federal assistance for test acquisition is ending soon. And so I guess with that in mind, what is the status of testing, like our testing supplies and also our testing capacity in the state in terms of, like, what's the mean turnaround time for getting a test result back? Here in Cordova, we've been really lucky. I've gotten tested a couple times and gotten my results back within an hour. But I know other parts of the state, it can take up to 8 to 10 days. So I was just wondering if there was a mean time and what that testing capacity looks like going into winter.
I appreciate it. I'll take one part of that and I believe Brian to answer some of the rest. So one aspect is of the turnaround time is, I think it's right at 2 days turnaround time from the state lab. And those would be located either in Fairbanks or in Anchorage. That time frame is when it is actually received received to the lab. The transportation time from communities matters. And so one of the other things we've really looking at and we're trying to push very, very hard is a lot of communities off the road system like Cordova yourself and a lot of other ones invested early on in what's called feed machines, which are 4, 8, or 16 Ford machines, which can turn around results in 4 hours. The company that makes them are actually well behind being able to meet the demand, and the limited supply that is available, we are pushing very hard. The governor will be having conversations here with HHS, really kind of imploring that we need these resources in Alaska so we can not have travel time be concerns. And so we're working on that. We're also working on a full order of Abbott test kits, the rapid test machines, turn around as well. And I'll let Brian address some of the other stuff that we're doing for overall supply.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. So, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. The specific about the Cepheid test, they're changing from kind of converting their manufacturing from just producing a SARS-CoV-2 test to they call a multi-panel assay, which will test for a number of respiratory diseases, COVID, influenza, and RSV. And they're having a little bit of a difficult time getting that up and running and being able to meet the demand. But in state, we're doing fine right now on vials and transport media, swabs, and like the Commissioner said, the Abbott ID Now test cartridges. We're continuing to supply those pretty much on a daily basis. We're doing 20 or 30 requests for testing materials a day from around the state, continuing to be able to support that. Our public health labs are staffed appropriately, so that testing time is doing pretty good, even though they continue to see even more testing coming in on a daily basis. And one of the other things I'll mention back on the vaccine project is it's our understanding right now that we're going to be getting our vaccine shipped directly from the federal government to providers that enroll in our system to do vaccinations. It'll come with a small ancillary kit, things like syringes and alcohol wipes and those kind of things. But we are also working on stockpiling and encouraging local organizations to stockpile some additional PPE. So when that vaccine becomes available, that you're ready to, and we're all ready to be able to continue to, to push the vaccine as rapidly as we get it and as quickly as we can for the population that needs it. So I think we're just fine for testing supplies now. Although the federal government continues to tell us that we're going to get out of that game and try to get everything back to the commercial market, like the Commissioner said, all of us from our angles through FEMA and the federal HHS, we're continuing to let them know that's concerning to us right now, and we're trying to get ahead of it. We have a couple of months here before that deadline, so we're continuing to communicate our needs, and we're going to continue to push for the state so we have what we need.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Councilman Schaefer.
And then, yeah, thank you for that. And then my only other question is, now that we're all going inside as winter is coming, it's getting colder, what do you predict in terms of prevalence and spread in the state over the winter?
9 days ago, we had counts right over 200. We had 230 and 240, 250, and today we're down at 200. So the way this spread, we are still learning more about. We had to update some of the CDC guidelines because they believe it is more transmission-based and it's not so much fomite, which is called surface transmission. We do anticipate, just figured individuals becoming indoors, they would actually have these case increases, which we are starting to see. So yeah, over the winter time, it's stating that we're going to have much more spread. And what has changed greatly, though, is our ability to treat and or identify which patients need hospitalization and or advanced care, or get treatment and then go home to heal. So that has been one of the biggest changes to the way our entire healthcare system has been delivered. Case in point, some of the pioneer homes, which have had outbreaks of cases, we've had a great deal of those individuals have already rapidly recovered. So as we're learning more about this, treatment methods have improved greatly. And so one of the things we're trying to tell people is we continue to do what we know, right? This is the keep your social distances small, or keep your social bubbles small, increase your social distancing, stay away from different groups, mask up if you're going to be around others, and keep everything clean. And we are, with the vaccine is going to become available, and we have to cover some groups. We anticipate that's some of the light at the end of the tunnel as we continue to really go through this process. But during that time, we're going to continue to really work on and improve our care and continue to really keep individuals healthy that have to be afflicted by this.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and I'll turn it back over to our counsel, Holly.
I do have a question, if that's okay for the state, and it's great to have you here. And as an attorney, my worries for the city are the implications of the expiration of the state of emergency on the city's ability to adopt protective measures specific to its community and on any funding that the city has received or that the state has received. And I'm just wondering, are those questions you're grappling with right now? I think most specifically, if the state does allow the state of emergency to expire at a time when our positivity factor is at its highest, are we then jeopardizing our response to COVID-19 on a state level from the introduction of the virus back in November of last year? And what are the implications for our municipalities, especially Cordova, if that's the case? And I know those are big questions, but I just wanted to see what your thoughts were.
I appreciate this, Commissioner Crum. We are weighing those specific questions when we look at the extension of the public health emergency. The two options on that is the legislature can convene and extend, and then the governor's mechanism as well. So as we weigh this out, those are the considerations that we are really making sure we have. We've identified certain aspects of the response which can continue on without it, but then we're also weighing the other aspects. And there has been a great deal that we have been able to utilize because of the public health emergency, including waiver suspension of regulations, which has allowed us to actually kind of transform our delivery of healthcare primarily through telehealth in the state of Alaska. And so items like this we are weighing, and as we come to a decision point on this, we'll definitely be sharing this broadly. But those are very good questions, and we're trying to weigh those out.
This is Brian. I'll add, on the local declaration side, that the local disaster declaration or emergency declaration is really independent of the governor's declaration. So even if the governor's were to expire, that shouldn't have any effect on a local declaration that may be in place in Cordova. And then on the funding side, I'll let Director Nelson talk a little bit about this, but our FEMA funding will remain intact, and we do have funding at the state level still to be able to acquire personal protective equipment and testing supplies, regardless of the disaster. We really used similar to what a lot of local ordinances have is an ability to do expedited procurement in a declared disaster. Well, we're 9 months into this now, and we feel like we have our procurement and supply chains all ready. So on our end, we don't need that. And even if the federal public health emergency or the federal Stafford Act declaration has an end date put to it, there are processes in place to make sure that the things that are eligible through FEMA remain eligible. And at some point they'll set a performance period for all that. But I don't know, Director Nelson, if you have anything more.
But yeah, this is Director Nelson. You covered a lot of it, Brian. So at this point, at some point, the federal declaration will have an end date. But as of this right now, it does not. So we are still in a response mode from the federal perspective, which means that the state of Alaska is receiving 75% federal funds, and we match it with 25%. So even, like Brian said, even independent of our state public health emergency, regardless of what happens with that, until we are told that the federal disaster declaration is ending and the performance period has been set, we can continue to gain federal funds and meet community needs under the public assistance, the federal public assistance program for emergency protective measures, which is really essentially when we're talking about contact tracing, testing, PPE, and those things that communities really need are all covered as eligible under that program.
Okay, thank you. So again, we just want to thank you for your outreach to the community and for the great working relationship we've had with you over the last few months. I think our only big ask for next year is that we have a stronger salmon run. If you can work on that for us. Did you have any?
I'll add that to the list. This is Adam. I just want to say I really do appreciate working with you guys. Overall, you guys have been a tremendous partner. You know, you had to come first community you had to deal with one of the big pushes for a commercial fishing season, and you know it was the benefits of what we learned there, how well that went, community rallying together, is what gave us the confidence as we moved into other regions around the state. I really do appreciate everything that's gone on in the region, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you. Any closing thoughts, Heather? And please, you're welcome to stay on the line for a few minutes if you'd like, because our next report is probably going to be from our incident management team, and that may be Dr. Sanders for a little local update.
I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming in tonight and having this conversation with us, and I hope you guys all have a good evening.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the incident management team COVID-19 update. And Dr. Sanders, do we have you online?
Great. Yeah, hi, I'm here. And
hi, thank you.
Thanks everybody at the state, because the support that we've got from you this year has just been incredible. As we were talking about earlier, we have had a bit of an outbreak recently. Over the last 3 weeks, we had a % positivity on our testing that got up towards 7%. We are now at 2%. We are currently at 4 active cases, so our cases have recovered. I think the reason that we've been able to see our cases decline is we caught this case pretty early. We are doing testing, not mandatory testing, but we have open testing to the community for any in-state travel. So we picked up this initial case with our in-state travel testing, and we're aggressive getting people quarantined, and I think we're seeing the effects of that early detection and aggressive testing effort that we have. We're hoping that we continue in this trend. Things are looking positive, and we are back to being able to conduct a good majority of our tests with our rapid. So, certainly here for local questions, but I mostly just want to let you all know that I appreciate what you're doing, and I thanks for your help this year.
Absolutely, glad to.
Okay, so council, are there any questions of Dr. Sanders?
Yeah, this is Melina.
Vice Mayor Meyer.
I kind of wanted to mention this before, thought about it during the discussion, so while we still have everybody on the line and Dr. Sanders, just wanted to ask a little bit how the contact tracing is happening now. I know really early on in the year when it was kind of happening, it was easier to stay in contact and see what the state's doing on contact tracing and locally. So I just wanted to kind of have an update on where we're at now from state contact tracing and if we're doing local contact tracing.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the state contact tracing, they've assembled a small army of contact tracers and are doing a really fantastic job. But to get that contact tracing started quickly, when we identify a case and notify a patient, we are providing the same information and guidance that the state contact tracers are giving. This information has been provided from the public health nurse that serves our community. So we give them that information, And often we will ask people to go ahead and notify their own contacts so that we can get them that quick notification and get them quarantining. So we'll have them do that self-notification, and then the state contact tracers step in. There is a little bit of variability when we don't have our local public health nurse doing our contact tracing, because of course she needs some days off. So occasionally there'll be a little bit of a change, but she communicates with us, and then we try to make sure that we are assisting with that follow-up for our local community. So from my perspective, I feel like we've had a lot of support, and that it's occurring on a rapid and efficient way that's keeping us safe. And I think that's part of the reason that we are seeing our cases decline like we are. But I don't know if anybody wants from the state, if you guys want to add anything else about the contact tracing.
Thanks, Dr. Sanders. I'll just add that this is Brian Fisher. Our Army continues to grow. So we have a pretty substantial force that we have hired in addition to our awesome public health nurses. And we continue to improve the IT systems that we're using for that system. Like Dr. Sanders said, we're all giving the same message out to patients or confirmed positives. We're looking at rolling out some additional functionality of that, hopefully pretty soon. Things like automated text messaging through that system back to the positive patients to give them the reminders to check in and check their symptoms while they're in their isolation period. We are, working with a whole bunch of partners, expanding our contact tracing army to local healthcare providers. UAA is assisting us. The Alaska National Guard has an outstanding team that's working with the public health nurses to do that. We're bringing on more guardsmen and women as we can. I do want to say, one of the messages we continue to share with folks is those that are identified as close contacts through the contact tracing piece. There really isn't a way to get out of the 14-day quarantine. So that was one of the messages that we're continuing to make sure we emphasize, that if you're identified as a close contact, such as a household member or somebody who spent a lot of time in an office with somebody who tests positive, that really the only thing that can be done there is that 14-day quarantine, and you can't test your way out of that quarantine just due to the incubation period and the period of infectiousness for the virus.
Okay, and then just one follow-up question to that is the robust contract tracing that we've had here in the state, and things like that we're continuing to build. Is that going to continue even if we get early vaccine that gets brought to the state? Is that contact tracing still going to be somewhat of a long-term institution in the state while we're really learning about this virus for the next coming year plus?
Yeah, this is Brian, and I'd say it's gonna remain in place for quite some time. With the way the vaccine will work, we're going to get a little bit at the beginning, a small allocation to the state that will be prioritized, and eventually there'll be enough produced by the manufacturers that we can, vaccinate everybody if they chose to get it. But it does take time for the vaccine to take effect and to really show a reduction in the transmission of the virus. So through that whole time, we still are going to have to be extremely vigilant and make sure that we keep that contact tracing capability in place. So we fully intend to keep an adequate number of contact tracers kind of for the long haul, but kind of above the baseline of our normal public health nursing staff.
Okay, and I just wanted to really thank you guys for all this time you've been in and speaking with us tonight. I know it's been a long time. We've gotten into this meeting. It's our first item. We're on 1B now, but really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to us. Small town like this, we've really had a good working relationship with you guys, and to say how much I appreciate it.
Thank you. We're looking forward to coming back next time and doing another in-person round, hopefully not in the middle of the crisis.
Us too.
We're with you there. Any other questions for Dr. Sanders, counsel? Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Sanders. and go to audience comments, and that telephone number again is 253-6202, and that's for audience comments regarding agenda items. Or 907-253-6202. Okay, we'll watch that phone line, and we'll move ahead to chairmans and representatives of boards and commissions. Dr. Sanders, we'll start with CCMC report.
Okay, great. So I don't have anything significant. I'll give you guys a quick update just so that everybody there is aware in terms of our hospital preparedness right now. We currently have 3 ventilators, 2 high-flow nasal cannulas, a lot of oxygen, and adequate staff, so we're very well prepared in terms of new equipment for getting ready for COVID. We also have fairly decent stock of PPE, so in that respect, we are also well prepared. Otherwise, I don't have anything specific to report about the hospital, but I'm open for questions.
Are there any questions, council? Okay, thank you. Do we have a school board report?
They have a meeting.
They have their meeting tonight, yeah. Okay, so also have a Prince William Sound aquaculture report. Councilman Baylor is a representative of that.
In the interest of time, I'll catch it next meeting, if that's all right.
Okay, absolutely. So we don't have a student council representative at this time. We have one item on the consent calendar. Any objection to leaving it there? Okay, roll call vote, please.
On the consent calendar, David Gleason. Maybe we lost him. Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
Tom Baylor.
Yes.
Kathy Sherman is absent. Jeff Gard.
Yes.
David Allison.
Yes.
Melina Meyer.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Yeah.
Point of order.
Councilman Schaefer.
Did we need to discuss the CIP list under 3A or F3A?
Yes, we do have so let's revert to item 3, Planning Commission Resolution 20-03 Capital Improvements List.
Good catch.
Checking things off.
Are we open for discussion, or
It's
what's?
just
Yeah, it's discussion, it's informational items. So any comments or questions, council?
My only one comment, sorry,
Councilman Schaefer.
was the E911 addressing we've talked about before, and I think it came up and then it went kind of to the back table again because at the state level there was some noise being made about doing it at a state level, but I think that was back in 2018, so I don't know if it would make sense to follow up on that. I just remember that from our discussions. There's some movement at the state level to do it. And not wanting to reinvent the wheel or do it twice. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, Councilman Baylor?
Yeah, and I don't know if it makes a difference in the way these are listed in order. I see number 3 is design crater like siphon. For me, that would be probably the top of the list. The water's probably the more important thing to have done first, but maybe it doesn't make a difference. And on the update of Titles 17 and 18, I haven't been a supporter of that. That's basically hiring a lawyer to go through those titles. And I think in this day and age when you can pull up any city, state, or municipality's codes and you can literally cut and paste, I think the Planning Commission, it would take a little bit of meetings, but I think they could get together and kind of go through that and probably work that out to satisfactory, and then maybe perhaps a little bit of legal time, but I don't see any reason to pay $30,000 to have them do that. So that's been on there before. I just don't support it. I think we could do that ourselves.
Is there a question on, comment online, council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Allison.
Councilman Allison.
Yeah, just I would probably agree with Councilmember Taylor there, but just to comment on the E911, the addressing we have to do either way, whether the state does a 911 system or we do our own 911 system, but we need to do the address. Money's in there, at least the majority of the money, and we've got a funding mechanism for the rest. It's been through 3 or 4 different city managers now that it's been on their plate and it hasn't gotten done. And I think somebody needs to be given the authority to get her done by the city manager. Money's there. Let's get our addresses done.
Okay, other comments? Council?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Guard and then Gleason.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm wholeheartedly in favor of getting the addressing done. I'd like to see it done before the next census.
Just waiting for that to crop up. And I'm sorry, was that you, Councilman Gleason, that also wanted to make a comment?
yeah, I did vote yes on that. I just had I got my headphones on and I had my mouthpiece. No, sorry about that.
Okay, I got it.
Is the harbor supposed to be on there, or is this a different one? I thought the harbor was our number one thing.
So that is for the city councils, for your list of capital improvement projects that we take to the state and federal partners for funding. This is more of an internal capital list generated by planning and zoning.
Okay, just making sure.
So, yeah, good question. And we recorded that as a positive vote on the consent agenda. Any other discussion, council? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to consideration of bids. And this item is the direction to city manager to negotiate with Quality Controls Incorporated for school HVAC upgrades.
Was there a motion someplace, Susan?
Yeah.
Page 8.
I direct the city manager to negotiate a contract with Quality Controls, Inc. for a sum not to exceed $195,975,000 to repair and upgrade HVAC system at Cordova Junior Senior High School.
Second.
7,500. Yeah, wait. Oh, yeah, I said that wrong. Typo. To clarify, $195,975.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Would you like to speak to your motion, Councilman Schaefer?
It's being paid for with the CARES funding. The upgraded air handling system will be good for the students, good for the teachers, good for the staff. No comments, in support.
Okay, and to your second, Councilman Baylor?
Yeah, I had an opportunity to talk with Alex Russin. He's in a meeting today. So my conversation, I was asking what this entailed, and it covered quite a bit, but it did not cover thermostat replacements. And he said, well, it wasn't on the list, and if we need to, we could possibly do that later. And my suggestion was to ask for a little bit more money and get it done on the CARES money. Don't take it out of school funding. I don't know, he was going to get back to me in an email. He didn't. My suggestion then would be to amend the motion to make it not to exceed $200,000 and give him a little bit of leeway for any other projects that they need to get done on this system.
Second.
So we have a amendment to the motion, Baylor, and a second, Ellison. Would you like to speak to your second to the amendment, Ellison?
No, I think it's a good idea. He did send Alex did send an email this afternoon that said it was up to 21 of them at $150 a piece. So that should cover it. They're going to find other issues and as they're going through things. So I support giving them a little extra money.
Okay, so council discussion to the amendment not to exceed $200,000, and I'll start with Councilman Gleason.
In support. I'm in support.
Vice Mayor Meyer?
Yeah, I'm in support of this.
And Councilman Baylor, you kind of made your comments in favor of it, did you?
support it, yeah.
Okay. Councilman Guard to the amendment?
I'm in favor of the amendment, in favor of the main motion.
Councilman Schaefer to the amendment?
I'm in favor of the amendment.
Councilman Sherman's absent, and I've heard all of you in favor, so ready to vote.
So on the amendment, Melina Meyer,
Yes?
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
David Gleason,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Kathy Sherman is absent, David Allison,
Yes.
motion carries 6-0.
Call for the question on the main motion.
Call for the question on the main motion. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes?
David Allison,
Yes.
Kathy Sherman is absent, Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
David Gleason,
Yes.
main motion carries 6-0.
Okay, so Mayor's report, I'll keep this brief. There's two handouts here that are correspondences. They kind of came in late just due to the nature of they happened between the packet going out and the meeting. One is a letter of support for the Essential Air Service contract to Cordova. We do this every year. I would just hold for a minute to see if there's any objection. Otherwise, I can sign that and send it out. Second item was a grant application that's due tomorrow. A request for a letter of support came in again after the packet. So it's for a small business innovation research program. It's an Alaskan consulting company that's looking at using a modular arrangement on a boat to collect ocean-borne or beach drifted plastics and bale them into cubes that can be used for like ABN baskets and structural items. So it's just a generic letter of support for that. So I guess I'd ask if there's any objection to those correspondences. I'll just go on with my the rest of my mayor's report and give you a chance to look at those if you like. Lobbyist Bitney mentioned in regards to our Tier 1 bond, which the city passed, and note that there would be a fiscal note to that depending on how that would play out in terms of our budget for 2021 or 2022. But right now the indications are there isn't going to be a special session. So that means the legislature isn't going to give us an opportunity really to incorporate a Tier 1 match on the state side. So we'll need to work with the governor's office to make sure that gets included in the governor's budget before that's published December 15th. So that's the path for that one. I'm sure you've all heard by now that the state of Alaska is liquidating the Chiniga and the Fairweather. I think it's something for council to consider on pending agenda, whether you'd like some outreach to other communities, tribes, through our economic development district to look at some kind of a local port authority or the potential for expressing interest in those or any other vessels that are liquidated per your last direction. I just wanted to mention that we've been working this Fisheries Development Committee for quite some time on king crab, and the state did issue a 15,000 pound king crab test fishery in Prince William Sound. So that's pretty exciting, and I think we actually had Cordova fishermen bid on and get that. So interesting to see how that results out. And I'm just going to keep it that brief. And I'll just ask one more time if there's any objection to those letters of support. So hearing none, I'll sign those and get those distributed, and we can go on to the manager's report.
I too am going to make this brief. A couple of things, though. I really want to recognize city staff at every level. As you heard from the group that was just presenting on COVID from the state, they think we're rock stars, and I think our staff are rock stars. So I just wanted to say thank you. As you know, our city facilities are open. Bedarkey is in a closure state right now because they got their flooring in. So in about another week, that facility will be totally COVID ready, and we're very excited to have deployed our CARES Fund resources to get our facilities open and carefully put together for public use. Pool's open, museum library's open, and again, all of the staff have put extraordinary efforts into making sure that these facilities are ready for the public to safely use. I also want to introduce a new staff member who is here. Curtis Fincher just arrived last week and is our new communications and special projects manager. He is already hard at work looking at fund sources and learning about opportunities that the city might have, and also will be the person on the ground who will deal with all of our public communications, making sure community knows what we're up to and is informed about any decisions that we as council have made or that the city needs to engage in. So welcome to Curtis. And you want to stand up and wave and drop your mouse for a second so they Yeah, so he and his wife both have arrived. She is employed long distance. She's a software developer. So we've got two new really dynamic people on the ground. I also want to let you know that when Jason Gabrielson left, we revamped his position. Again, Curtis is filling a piece of that, but we also recognized that we needed some IT support, and Andrew Scott has been working on our behalf. I don't think he's here, but he too has brought a really great dynamic energy to our group and is providing some really remarkable solutions that all of us will benefit from. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Sam and I don't know who else is. Oh, Aaron. Okay, great. So there's a proposal that is being brought forward for your consideration to put forward a bond for refuse. Thank you. Brain dead. And they have a presentation. So I'm not sure exactly what those who are not online. They have the. You guys have the PowerPoint. So I'm going to turn it over to Sam.
Are we going to drop back to staff reports then after?
Yeah.
That's before.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, it's the PowerPoint's catching up.
Do I have to do that?
I'll just mention while we have a minute again for the staff reports, we have almost all the city staff here. So when we get to staff reports, I just want councilmen online to know that they're available through the manager for questions.
Okay. I'm gonna take my mask off so you guys can hear me better. So Aaron is here. Chris Bolin is here if you have any seriously technical mechanical questions you'd like to talk to him about. Together we put this PowerPoint together. We're all trying to work towards improving the Public Works Department. And I appreciate their help a lot because it's been kind of a busy couple months. So my job is to kind of tell you about the past history of the landfill and the equipment that we have inherited. Aaron's going to talk about what we what state that equipment is now and what we would like to move forward with, and then I'll talk to you guys about the financing options so we can solve our equipment problems in the future. So in 1999, the landfill was open. I don't ever really remember it being over on the other side, but I lived here. But it was opened out at what month? 17 Mile. And when it opened, we inherited a used loader from the streets department that was 10 years old when we got it. So it was from 1998. It is now 32 years old. Works most every day when it's up and running. And then in the early 2000s, there was some equipment purchased that was geared towards the refuse, towards the landfill, but ended up in the streets department. And around 2004, we got an excavator from 2002, was built in 2002, that already had 1,800 hours. So that's our current and only equipment that we have at the landfill to do all the work that's required out there, from daily cover, clearing areas, picking up every piece of that scrap metal pile and putting it into an organized pile. And it's very large, 13,000 cubic yards just in 10 years since they came and picked it up. So I'm gonna go ahead and let Aaron kind of give you a little more information on the current equipment. And do you want to try the mouse? It's a little hyper, but I think it'll work. Is it on? Is it on? Okay, you can sit. And then you can do the arrows.
Okay, so like Sam said, we have two pieces of equipment currently, a 1988 cat loader and a 2002 Hitachi excavator. We have the hours posted here. The hour meters read 9,500 for the loader and 6,500 for the excavator. I know that the loader hour meter is inoperable, and I suspect that the excavator is as well, because if you do the math on those hours over the lifespan of the equipment, that comes to just over an hour a day, and that is not accurate. So it is well beyond those numbers there. These pictures just show a typical day of what the equipment does at the landfill. That is in the construction and demolition cell, and that is an everyday operation there. So on the loader, the main issue is it's 32 years old. But other than that, to start with, it's underpowered. It only has a 4-cylinder engine. So it's underpowered to start with. It's had a hard life. We've used it a lot. And then on top of that, it has big, heavy foam-filled tires for the landfill. And so what power it does have takes most of that power just to get that machine running. And that picture there, that is about as steep of an incline as that loader will go up with a full bucket of material. Also on the loader, the rollover protection is very rusty and has cracks, and per OSHA cannot be welded. That picture on the right is kind of hard to see, but in the upper right-hand corner of that picture is a bolt and a bushing. That is what secures the cab of the loader to the loader, and they are very worn out and sloppy. One has been replaced. The rest need to be replaced and are scheduled for next year. This is a major safety issue that needs to be addressed here soon. The rack for the bucket release, you can see the highlighted sections there, welded and repaired numerous times. These things pick up heavy loads, moving gravel back and forth, covering every day, and it's pretty rough on it. On the excavator, the rollover protection has the same problem. There's cracks, it's rusty. You can see kind of the condition on the pictures to the left there, what kind of condition the machine is in. The picture on the right, if you look at that red paint there in the center of the picture, there's a major crack in the boom. There's several other cracks, and we have to get those repaired just about on a yearly basis. The electrical system, in 2013, there was an electrical fire and repairs have been made, but ever since that time, you know, it just hasn't been the same. Things work intermittently, and it's an expensive repair. So at the top, you can see the estimated labor at $45,000, and below the parts, that is real dollars that were spent maintaining just these two pieces of equipment in the last 6 years. And you look at that total cost, and we're about halfway to a piece of new equipment just on what we've spent the last few years on parts and labor. So here's case 1021. This is the loader we would like to purchase. It comes equipped with the landfill protection package, which our current loader does not have. So all the vulnerable points are well protected. It's designed to do what we're going to ask it to do. Main uses are hauling cover material. The big thing is currently our loader won't work on the slopes of our cells, and this loader will have the power and be able to do what we need it to do to work on the side slopes of our cells. Also, the snow removal is a very big thing at the landfill. If we don't remove all the snow off the top of the cells, when that snow melts, it causes leachate, runs into the ground, and affects water quality, groundwater quality. And so that is a big thing at the landfill, the groundwater quality. We monitor that twice a year, and it is very critical that we get that snow off the top of the cells. The excavator, the big thing for this is excavating and preparing a new cell. What we can do now is, as we're moving and expanding a new area, we excavate gravel first, so we can excavate to within 10 feet of groundwater. And the current area we're working on now is we can excavate down 14 feet. And that's a significant space that we gain in each cell, being able to excavate that out. And at the same time, we're also gaining cover material that's used later on. The dozer, we currently do not have a dozer, but it would be a very valuable addition to our fleet. It comes with a protection package. It's not specific to landfills, it's just a general dozer protection package, but it will protect the machine very well. The big thing about the dozer is it will be used mainly for compacting and covering. We are currently using mostly our excavator for this. It's not really designed for that. The dozer would be much better, much more efficient, and it will save a lot of wear and tear on both the loader and excavator. And over time, it's gonna make all three pieces last a lot longer.
You touch on why you wouldn't get a sheep's foot compactor? I think I asked you that question.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for reminding me. So we looked into getting a landfill compactor, which is similar to the loader. It looks like the loader, but it has a dozer blade on it, and it has big steel wheels with what they call sheep's feet that's designed for compacting. And that is what big landfills use for compacting, like what the dozer is doing here. And that is the ideal piece of equipment. The problem is that one piece of equipment alone runs almost $1 million. And so for what we do in our size of operation, it's not really something that we can justify. We could do real close to the same job with these other pieces of equipment. So here we have a few pictures. On the upper left is an aerial view of that metal pile. And if you look in the upper left corner of that picture, we have actually started a new pile there. We have a very large pile, and these pieces of equipment move. Like Sam said, they've stacked and moved every piece of metal in that pile. The lower left picture is the excavation for the new municipal solid waste cell that we are currently working on. That is the latest expansion we've done. That cell is dug down between 10 and 14 feet in depth along the area there. And that is what the excavator would be primarily used for. And then on the right, that is just an aerial photo of the landfill property. It's 62 acres in total. Roughly half of it is cleared now. So we do still have all the property to the east on the right side of the picture. There is all spruce trees, alders will need to be cleared. The dozer could be used for that along with the excavator. Currently, we're only actually using about 20% of the landfill space that we're actively working in, and those areas are not full. So we have a lot of area left to go.
Okay, so we did some homework on how we could solve our equipment problem. And we talked to a dealer, and you can see the terms there, 4.25%. The maximum time allowed to pay that off is 60 months, so your payment is steep. And there is no subsidy. If we could talk to the permanent fund, to council about the permanent fund, time frame would be determined by you all, and maybe you would give us a subsidy of $500,000. And then the best deal by far is the Clean Water Fund. And the reason we qualify for that is just what Aaron talked about, you know, getting that snow off, reducing the leachate that's going down, improving water quality. We can plow around it, on top of it, over it. We can compact it better. It's just a win-win for the actual water sampling. And what water sampling is like 50 grand, 50 a year. Every year we have to spend $50,000 on water sampling. And we're doing, you know, we're passing right now, and we need to continue to pass because it'll only go up from there. So it's important that we have good equipment. So the great deal about the Clean Water Loan is that they give us $500,000 subsidy, meaning we don't pay that back. It's like a free piece of equipment. It's like buy two, get one free. It's a great deal. And we can go 15 to 20 years on the financing, which allows for a payment that's doable at the refuse department. And this is just a little breakdown on the payments. We have spent a lot of time thinking about our money situation and our budget. We have tried to kind of preload ourselves by getting some bigger purchases, dumpsters, bear-proof lids, a truck. We have a truck in a budget so that we are comfortable where we're at the transfer station. And the landfill equipment was the next on the list. The equipment, and this is a estimate with freight to Cordova, is 1.153. And so that would leave us some money left over, and within the loan parameters, we asked for a lien to be able to build a lean-to replace the shop doors so that we can put the equipment inside, and our shop doors are kind of in bad shape. And then possibly we could do additional implements. One or parts of all of those is what we would look to. We need, you know, if you spend the total requested amount of 1.210, then you get the $500,000 subsidy. If you don't, it decreases, and I don't have a formula for that. It kind of depends on how the state wants to move forward with that. So in the resolution, sorry, you know, we're just asking to put it onto the ballot because anytime we go into debt, we have to put it onto the ballot. If that resolution passes, our plan to move forward is to have some public meetings, kind of like we did with the harbor fund, with the harbor bond, those kinds of things to get public support for this. And I guess other than that, unless you have some questions.
Any questions, council? Councilman Schaefer, then Baylor.
I just have a question to clarify something that you just said about the, so if you accept the full loan amount, 1.2 million, we get the $500,000 subsidy. Is that if we accept the full amount or once we've paid that full amount? Or paid, when is the subsidy applied? Is
As
it
you
$200,000?
purchase, the subsidy is applied.
Okay.
So when they start charging, so if we bought all of our equipment at 1.15 or whatever it was, then the subsidy is applied to that percentage. And then as we spend the remaining money, we can get up to 500,000.
Got it. Thank you.
Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, trying to do the math real quick here in your slide. So you had, what were your actual cost of, what I'm driving at, your actual cost of repair parts, not the estimate on labor. And then if you divide that into the number of years, we're paying X amount a year already.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of, I think the public needs to see that.
That would be a great slide, yeah.
Yeah, versus what our payment is, because we're paying already for a bunch of junk and it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
About $40,000 a year for only 2 pieces of equipment, because it was $200,000 over 5 years.
It was $150,000 the last 5 years on parts.
And then $50,000 for labor, $45,000 for labor. So
15 for labor.
No, 45 for labor.
I'm sorry, I'm just reading what you got here. Between 2 pieces of equipment, the refuse department has spent $150,000.
Oh, that's in the memo, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the way we got to the 45 is that, the 15,000 is actual money, that is actual 2 years of labor cost. But we couldn't spread it out over that total time. We didn't have actual labor costs over that total time frame. So we extrapolated to get it to the 45 because I didn't want to compare 2 years of labor with 6 years of costs. So, yeah, I forgot that I had put that in there.
I think that would be a good.
I agree. That would be an excellent slide. It would be an excellent point.
Other questions for council online? Okay, Councilman Meyer and then Allison.
Do you talk a little bit more about the clean water fund? Because the loan, the interest rate at 1.5 and the at 500,000, that seems like pretty good.
You're a little garbled, Emelina. We're having a hard time hearing you. I think I heard talk a little bit.
A little better now?
A little better, yes.
Oh, wait, I just had a question about the clean water fund loan. Can you expand a little bit more about what that is and how we would qualify for that?
Oh, we've already qualified. I filled out the application. The Clean Water Loan is a state DEC program which gets funding probably mostly through EPA, and it's how it helps communities get better water quality. And so we qualify for that at the refuse area because if we can reduce the amount of leachate and decrease the amount of water moving through those landfill cells, then our water quality is improved. It's the same loan that we use for LT2, so it's kind of a broad spectrum. You can do non-point, point solution or pollutions, and so that's how we end up qualifying. But I've already been through the actual application process, and we're approved. It's just a matter of getting approval from the voters.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilman Allison.
Yeah, I think that answers the question. I was just going to ask what the risk is that this program would go away, or that they take the subsidy away, or is there any risk in that? It doesn't sound like there's much, but the funding sounds like it's there, and the subsidy is part of the whole program, correct?
Correct.
Any other questions, council?
Mr. Mayor, this is Allison again.
Yes.
Just one final comment on it. If we're putting, and this goes to anything, I guess, we're putting for the voters. I think we need to do a better job, or a job of any kind, towards stating our case to the public. We need to make sure that we're supportive of it. You know, we're going to give it to the voters. We need to be supportive of it and figure out a way to convince them that it's a good program. It sounds like this shouldn't be too big a deal, but anytime we put something for the voters, we need to support it, not just let it ride on its own.
Yeah, I mean, our plan is if it goes on to if it passes tonight, we'll be setting up public meetings to just do exactly what you said.
Councilman Baylor?
So obviously that we're going to have a payment. Where is that money coming from, the payment? Are we going to have to raise garbage rates? I mean, these are questions you're going to get.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Where do we make that payment money from?
As I mentioned earlier, that we have made some large purchases. So, you know, we have raised rates in the past. We will not be raising rates this year. I will never say that I will not raise rates, because that's just silliness. You can't say that. We believe where we're at right now that we can financially support these payments, including the dumpster payment that we already have to the permanent fund. We also have $275 in our depreciation fund, and our goal would be always to have at least one payment for the clean water loan and for the permanent fund in that depreciation fund for some craziness that might happen. So that would be always be our goal. We do have a couple other things that we want to purchase, but we want to pay for those out of the depreciation fund. So we have thought through the payment process a lot.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the equipment, Council?
Councilman Gleason.
Councilman Guard, then Gleason.
I'm not clear on where the 500,000 comes in. Are we buying a total of $1.62 million worth of equipment, and then the $500,000 forgiveness would bring it down to 1.12, or is we buying 1.12 and the 500,000 would bring us down to 0.62?
The second, the loan amount is 1.21, the total loan amount, and the $500,000 is taken out of it. It's like 41% of the total loan amount is subsidized.
And this is set up in such a way that it can't become another fund debt reimbursement program?
It is through the state, but it's EPA money. I mean, I can't answer that, I guess.
Calls for speculation.
Yeah.
Sorry for asking the question.
It is federal money being passed through the state, though, is a good answer.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Gleason.
Yeah, I was just curious if are you guys doing the 15-year or the 20?
I think we're gonna, as Clay says, noodle on that for a while. There's a risk.
I would recommend the 15 because it doesn't sound like the excavator is going to last for 20 years. So if you got 18 years out of the last one, was it used when you bought it? Or?
Yeah, it was used when we got it. Had 1,800 hours on it when we got it.
Okay. Well, if you think the equipment can last longer than the loan, then go with 20. But if it's going to conk out before the loan's fully paid off, that'd be a same deal.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's what I was wondering. All right. That's all I got.
Okay. Any other questions, Council? Okay, so we're on City Manager's report. Thank you, Sam, Aaron. City Manager's report.
I'm done. I gave mine at the beginning, so we can move on.
Okay, City Clerk's report.
I just wanted to say that absentee and in-person voting is happening now at the Cordova Center, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, up until Monday, November 2nd, which is the day before the election. And then on Election Day, the voting will happen here at the Ed Room from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And the clerk's office has been answering very many questions about that, so please continue to call 6248 or send me emails. I can direct you to the right places on the state website and or get answers for you on how you can vote. That's all I have.
Okay, so we have staff quarterly reports, and I just want to remind council that almost all the staff that prepared those reports are here in the room. So any questions, comments, discussion on staff quarterly reports? I'll just go in order here. Councilman Schaefer.
I don't think so. Thanks for putting them together.
Councilman Guard.
Yeah, no comment. Thanks a lot for all the work.
Vice Mayor Meyer.
Yeah, thank you. All the stuff that's put together. Kind of a lot of information to digest. This meeting has been pretty long, but definitely from all your guys' report, 2020 is a lot different than any other staff report we had. So thank you guys for being really flexible and working with 2020. I think you guys really made the best of it, and really appreciate the work that went into these reports.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Allison.
Yeah, thanks for the report. So we don't often ask questions, and I don't have any questions this time, but for those of you out there creating the reports, we do appreciate them. I think that most, not all of the council reads through those and does look through those reports and certainly appreciate them very much, and thank you for doing that.
Councilman Gleason.
No question. Thank you for putting that time in for those reports.
Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I appreciate the fire department here. It says the partnership between the city and Forest Service has allowed the public safety department to acquire a pretty decent used patrol vehicle in the past for a quarter of the cost of a brand new vehicle. And another little thing about saving the community with the F-250. Anyway, I appreciate when you look at outside sources and partnerships and trying to save your department, and by that, the community money doing those types of things. So thank you for that. And then on the harbor department, and for some of the people that haven't been around here, I see under general activities, again, I highlighted this last time, but delivered 1,110 gallons of used oil to the high school and delivered 1,450 gallons of used oil to the city shop. So that wasn't always the case. We were paying to ship this stuff out. The harbor was paying to ship all of this stuff out. But kudos to the public works staff down there. They got that oil burner working and figured it out and tricked it out. And now they've got themselves a nice heated work environment, and they're burning up that oil, which saves us money. And the same with the city. They got a new maintenance person down there, and there was a used oil burner that wasn't being used, and he's got that working. And it's, you know, it's, again, it saves the harbor, it saves the school, it saves the taxpayers. So I really appreciate the efforts of the staff and everybody that put effort into doing that. And then I read through the rest of them. Hopefully we're gonna have this committee for investments get together pretty quick. I'm not real thrilled about a 2% gain, but we'll wait for the committee to get together and we'll get more information on that. And I still say we need to look at other avenues and get other input on that. And yeah, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item, council, is correspondence. Any comments on the correspondence? Have a full value determination from the state assessor, Cordova Volunteer Fire Department Board and Manager's letter regarding volunteer compensation. and a chamber email with 2 quarterly letters and updates. Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, the letter from the fire department was, I guess that was just to me. I understand they're asking away, but just coming to us in a weird way. So I'm not going to comment whether I would support it or not, but I think there's a proper channel if you really want to ask that could come to us with a little more information too. So anyway, that's all I had.
Other comments on correspondence, council? Okay, hearing none. Ordinances and resolutions. We have ordinance 1192, which is an ordinance of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, repealing and, I can read this, reenacting Cordova Municipal Code Title II Elections to update and clarify the city election process, add authority to modify voting requirements during an emergency, adopt an early voting process, and expand the vote by mail process to promote and support remote voting. And this is a first reading, and we just direct council also to the memorandum.
So moved. Put it on the table.
Okay.
Second?
Have motion Baylor and second Schaefer. Would you like to speak to your motion, Baylor, or get maybe a...
There's a lot here, so I will defer.
Okay, council, would you like to hear from your council? Holly? Yes. Would you like to just give a brief overview, Holly, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be very brief. I think one of the things that it's really important to emphasize is we've seen a lot of court cases coming down in the last 2 months surrounding voter rights or the violation of voter rights due to rules that are more rigid, that are on the books, that don't allow voters to protect themselves from exposure to COVID, more specifically, individuals that are immune compromised, elderly, or in a high-risk group. One of the things that your administration really wanted to do, your city clerk really wanted to do, is make sure that your code was updated in a way that council could move quickly and react to an emergency situation in a way that protected voters' rights and the public health and safety. The code rewrite creates a lot of clarity. It cuts out a lot of extraneous information and language. But most importantly, it creates emergency plan options so that council can respond to not just COVID, but any emergency situation that might impact your voting process. And I think I tried very hard, and I know your clerk tried very hard to give you as much transparent information regarding the changes, but they are so substantial, it became a bit of a bear. So you have a lot of documents in front of you. I'm sorry for that. But the memo is probably the most succinct. And it is 12 pages, so that goes to show. But it's mostly a table, so, it's not too bad.
So that again was this handout, council, and it really kind of just summarizes on a code section by code section where there were and weren't changes, and just a kind of notes on what those changes were. So to your second, Councilman Schaefer.
So I guess my big question was in the section, sorry. Okay, so in the voting rolls, it's in casting an absentee ballot, there is still language that requires a witness. Is that necessary? I mean, I know the state waived it for right now, for the election that's happening right now. Do we need a witness authentication generally? Can we get away without it, or is it better really to not? I'm just wondering what that purpose that serves.
No, I think that's a great question. It really emphasizes a lot of the conversation we're seeing right now. We actually have a case in front of the Supreme Court, and outside of Alaska, we have several state cases where there has been a challenge to the removal or the stay of that requirement because there is worry that it creates or it compromises the integrity of the by-mail voting process. So while in Alaska, we have an Alaska Supreme Court case in which for this election, the Alaska Supreme Court applied a balancing test and said, when we look at where the COVID numbers are right now, and we look at access, voter accessibility, we have individuals in villages that are under mandated quarantines. For this election, for the state of Alaska, we find that the witness signature requirement would violate their right to vote. Outside of Alaska, we have other people saying that if you remove a witness signature requirement by mail ballot, you are compromising the integrity of the election. So the answer is, I don't know as a matter of policy if it's necessary or not. I do know that it is something we have required and is required in every jurisdiction I'm aware of generally. But I also know that as your attorney, one of the things this election code allows you to do is pass an ordinance specific to the needs of a particular election. Before your upcoming election, unless there is some change in the COVID-19 situation, I'm guessing you're going to see an ordinance come before you supported by the attorney saying you need to consider these voter accessibility issues and the impacts they might have on voters' rights in light of COVID on the ground now. And having you react to things in real time is how we create reasonable responses and considerations, and we protect the constitutionality of the decisions of this council. I don't know if that answers your questions. It is sort of an I don't know, but this is designed to let you respond constitutionally to the I don't know.
So we have that flexibility.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
This would give you that flexibility.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll go through discussion in order. Councilman Gard.
My question on that flexibility is, if we were going to put through an ordinance like that in some situation, how far before the election would we need to make that decision and ordinance happen?
It's a good question. I might defer to Susan. We were talking about it and thinking about the time. What we're looking at is publication, right? And I think, when is the ballot and the envelope, when are those created? What can we do to get as close as we can to both protecting the integrity of the election as well as the voters' rights and public health and safety?
Well, I'm going to say immediately, as in before this has even gone through its 30 days, I would say let's put that next ordinance on before you so that I'm very well prepared ahead of time, because I'm going to be ordering and figuring out envelopes that look kind of similar to the state envelopes right now. So, yeah, as soon as we can, I would say.
So what we're talking about with the March election, talking about doing this, right?
Yes, we're talking about the March 2nd, 2021 election, in which I believe my first advertising and probably my ordering of the ballots would have to be sometime in December, ordering of the envelopes. So this is going to be second reading November 4th and not effective until, December 3rd or so. But probably probably in the second meeting in November, you'll be seeing such an ordinance to decide whether you want to waive signatures for the March 21 election.
And I would just piggyback on what Susan said. It is not the general course of this council to just be reactive to what we see elsewhere. So I think you should anticipate, and I know that you guys generally do this, but it's not just about the witness signature requirements. It's also about, do we go out to these voters in some situations and provide them a resource? Do we create support mechanisms that we may not have had and will not have in times where we're not dealing with this type of, so council will have to grapple with how you structure your voting system in a way that serves your population. And I think that is one of the problems I've seen in other jurisdictions is they just don't do that. It's more reactive. They see, for example, that the state has this witness signature issue, and we address that issue and that issue only. So I think one of the things that your city clerk will be bringing to you is something that guides you through that process, and that will be the follow-up board. Ideally, that's the plan.
Thank you.
Councilman Gleason.
Yeah, I don't have any questions, so that's a long read.
Councilman Allison.
No, I support it.
Councilman Sherman is absent. Vice Mayor Meyer.
Thank you. Yeah. You guys hear me a little better now?
That is a little better.
Okay. I had a question about the early voting or absentee voting. When would that be counted? Say, if with our ballot box, if people turned in their ballots early before the election, would they be counted on the same day that election day is, or would they wait until the 14 days or however long it is after the election for those to be counted?
Early voting is counted on election day.
Perfect. Thank you. I think I had one other question, but I lost my train of thought, so I don't have it, so I guess that's it.
Yeah. You can ask it at second reading. You can think about it again.
Okay, any further discussion? And this is a first reading, council. Hearing none, a roll call vote.
David Allison,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes?
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
David Gleason.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Next item is Resolution 10-20-37, which is a resolution of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, authorizing the City of Cordova to issue general obligation debt consisting of a loan from the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation in the principal amount of not to exceed $1,120,000 to finance the purchase of landfill heavy equipment and to submit the question of the issuance of such debt to the qualified voters of the city at the March 2nd, 2021 regular city election.
So moved.
I'll second.
Have a motion Baylor and second Schaefer. Would you like to speak to your motion, Councilman Baylor?
Yeah, I still need to clarify the amount. And I think Councilman Guard asked it, but so it's $1,120,000 minus the $500,000, so we're actually having to pay back $620,000. Is that correct?
That is correct, except that I think Councilman Schaefer is going to make an amendment because we just have a typo in that number.
Okay,
But you do deduct the 500 before you amortize the loan.
Okay, so my comment, to me, if I was confused on it and I heard it discussed a couple times, I think the way this is written would confuse most people. I think I would like, my opinion, I would like to read this out and somehow that we're borrowing $620,000, not $1,120,000. I know that's what you're borrowing. I know the mechanism, but I mean, not on the resolution, but on the public. I guess I'm just saying, I read this, I get confused.
It is kind of confusing, but we have to say 1.2 because I did
Right.
transposing on numbers, but we have to say that in the ballot language.
Right, and I
But
support that, but I guess I'm saying on the education part.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that over.
Because when I read this, I'm like, no way.
Yeah.
And then going back to that too, so that if I was, my numbers right, that was, you said $150,000 in parts over 5 years, so $30,000 a year, and you're looking at a payment of, where would I read that, $40-some thousand on this loan. So again, that was out in mechanics time, and you could extrapolate that out with used equipment. It's probably going to continue. So, okay, I'm gonna support this. I just to me that was confusing. Even though Jeff asked the question, I was like, did I hear him right? So, okay.
So entertain a motion for an amendment to amend the amount.
Yeah,
Councilman Schaefer?
I'd like to amend the resolution so that everywhere in the resolution where it says 1120, for the number, it should be 1210. So 1.2100000 instead of 11200000.
And second that.
So I have a motion to amend and a second. Any discussion on the amendment to correct the amount to $1,210,000 not to exceed? Councilman Gard.
No comment.
Oops, I got it right here. Councilman Allison.
Well, I support it. Thank you.
Councilman Vice Mayor Meyer.
Yeah, since we're voting on the language, are we going to be doing a second reading of this resolution? Or is it just one and done?
Yeah, this is just one and done. It's a resolution. And this is to this.
Okay, so
And this is to the amendment, which is to revise the amount to $1,210,000.
okay, yeah, and I support changing that. I guess I could make another amendment later, kind of going off of what Taylor said. I was thinking of some language that we could use. Change that, so I'll wait after this amendment.
Councilman Gleason to the second.
Support. I'm in support.
And Councilman Allison. I thought so. I jumped around there a little bit and lost my place. So I think everyone's spoken to the second. Any further discussion on the second?
To the amendment.
To the amendment, sorry. Hearing none, roll call vote.
So on the amendment, David Allison.
Yes.
Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
David Gleason.
Yes.
Kathy Sherman is absent. Melina Meyer.
Yes.
Tom Baylor.
Yes.
And Jeff Gard.
Yes.
So the amendment carries 6-0.
Okay, so we have the main motion as amended. Councilman Baylor spoke to that. To the second, Schaefer? That's where you made your amendment. Did you have any?
No,
Discussion on the main
I
motion.
appreciated the presentation from Aaron and Sam. That was really good information. And no, I'm in support of it.
Okay, to the main motion as amended, Councilman Allison?
Oh, I support it. Thank you.
Okay, and Councilman Sherman is absent. Councilman Gard?
I support it. No comment.
Vice Mayor Meyer?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same thinking as Councilmember Baylor about it's a little confusing where it says of which $500,000 qualifies for forgiveness. It sounds like to me that it could be very confused that we're borrowing 1.2 and then expecting or, hoping that $500,000 of it is going to get forgiveness later on. So
Yeah. Councilman
I'm trying
Meyer?
to figure out where to put in there.
Before you make an amendment, I just remind that staff did indicate that they were going to be doing some pretty extensive education and publishing of this bond proposition to explain it to the community. So maybe that would be the vehicle for clarification.
Yeah, and maybe it would be, I guess, since Wally's there, maybe it could be easy. I guess I was just thinking that, maybe we could just put in order to replace landfill equipment, to replace land or 1.7 million worth of landfill heavy equipment.
But that's not correct, Councilman Meyer. That's $1.2 million of equipment, and the $500,000 subsidy would reduce the fiscal note to the city to $620,000 plus interest.
Okay, so the 500,000 is coming from the 1.2.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
See, I wasn't the only one.
I get it now. So that's why I was confused, because I was thinking that at first, and then I guess I got confused during the discussion. So
710.
okay. Yeah, I think maybe that would be the right vehicle then, as staff is correcting. I think how it's written is correct then, of which 100 will be forgiven. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Schaefer, any more to the main motion?
Nope, I'm.
Okay, Councilman Gleason, to the main motion as amended.
In support.
Okay, I think you're ready for a roll call vote. Councilman Baylor.
Sorry, always one more. Yeah, I'm still hung up on this the way it's written on that. I think Melina and I are both like a little bit confused there. But it's let me ask this real quick. So if we pass this is going to have to be the exact wording that they put out on the ballot.
Yes, and I will share.
Okay.
There were at least 3 of us, and I was included in that worked on about 5 different drafts of this language, trying to find a way to be financially accurate in a way that did not compromise the integrity of the loan and the voter approval of the loan, which was very important. And we struggled. We struggled. Yeah. And we tried to make it simpler. We lost accuracy. So we tried to get the accuracy back, and we lost clarity. And so I think ultimately what, and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but what your public works director and help from the planning director did was agree that they were going to really clarify in the information that went to the voters. But I mean,
well, can I just really quickly, and then I'll move on. So right at it says, reading this, qualifies for the forgiveness in the full amount if borrowed, giving the city a total loan amount of $620,000 to be repaired back. Why couldn't you say something like that?
Well, we can't, so we have to implicate that we are borrowing 1 point.
You got that at the top.
We have to put the exact amount, and then we need to put the amount of the subsidy. So you're just saying, then say, which would result in 700, or, I mean.
710.
710.
Yeah.
710, okay, whatever it is, of debt to be paid back.
I think the thing we talked about that was that we say that, and then, I don't know, somebody gets hit by a car or something, and we don't borrow we don't spend the entire amount. Then we lose subsidy. So I think the end goal was that we had to put the entire amount, and we had to put the subsidy without
presumptions of spending.
Well, if you're not getting a subsidy, I'm not voting for it.
Well, it's not qualified.
That's the way that goes.
It doesn't say.
I know, but it does. But you have to spend the 1.2 million to get the subsidy. If you don't spend the 1.2 million, then you don't get 500,000. So if we don't say we're borrowing 1.2 million and we are eligible, or whatever the word was we ended up putting in there, for the $500,000 subsidy, we'll get a subsidy regardless. I mean, our goal, we're going to spend that money. We're not leaving anything on the table, right? But my understanding legally is that we have to clarify that we're eligible only if we spend 1.2 million.
Well, it's in there. You've got, and I'm sorry, Mayor, but I just got to get this. So it starts out, may the city of Cordova borrow up to 1.1 or whatever the $1 million, right? You revise that, I don't know what the numbers. So that's in there. And then you move on to say, on the state of conversation, of which $500,000 qualifies for forgiveness if the full amount is borrowed, giving the city a total loan amount of X amount of dollars. Doesn't that explain it?
Yeah. I'll leave it up to Holly, I guess. It's a legal thing.
Okay,
I mean,
well,
I think
if it's an issue, then I'll drop it. I just like, people are.
Yeah, you want to make sure that they understand the question so that it passes, and I think that's a very valid goal. I think Generally, as long as you make sure that it's stated, if we set it in a way where it was attached and we weren't implying that, as long as we don't take away from the integrity of the $500,000 subsidy is not guaranteed in essence unless we spend. Well, my worry is that we get to $498,000. But I think if we say up to the amount and keep it before a question mark, we might be okay. So if we're going to do that, I think we should do it right now and get the language on there so that we can look at it and get this.
So maybe recess. Can we?
Well, first of all, Mayor, am I the only one that?
I haven't heard a motion to amend the amended main motion, but I mean, I guess, I don't know. It's back to Councilman Guard's question. What's the chances that the EPA doesn't come through with the funding or something? I'm just thinking about the bond issue for the school where it went out and it said, this is how much the city's borrowing, and assuming that there's a forgiveness from the state, and then that doesn't transpire, so.
Well, we're still borrowing the money.
I think
that's the point. You're still borrowing $1.210 no matter what happens with the subsidy.
Right.
I mean, ultimately, we want the only requirement for voter approval is the amount of your debt. So we were trying to reflect that debt, and really, we were going up sort of beyond where we normally go when we're just saying, do we have a right to borrow X amount? And we were providing more information because the subsidy was such a significant piece in deciding whether or not to go for the loan. I think that the ability to put voter information out there and really harp on the fact that this would be, and it's our goal to make it $700 and whatever $1,000, then that would allow you to communicate with the voter in a very clear way. We can change the language. There's nothing illegal about changing the language, but if we do it in a way where we are in no way compromising the accuracy of what we're doing, which is borrowing 1.2.
Councilman Howard.
I just want to make one point, and I think this brings to bear that we now have a communications person on staff. And that has really been a problem in the past where we had a lot of things that we wanted to get to public and help them understand, but we didn't have anyone who could drive it home when Sam and her team are working nonstop and full-time doing their other work. So Curtis has a job clearly, and I mean, it's really important. We want to do this project and we need to get the word out, and we do have someone on the ground that can do that.
We can let the minutes reflect that too, that the city council wanted to clear to the voters that if we received the full $500,000 subsidy, we expect the fiscal note to the city or citizens would be $710,000.
And there's no reason why council can't direct that certain steps be taken when you get that amount to, and to expend up to the, to expend the full amount. Like that can be made clear by council. This is just getting that proposition on the ballot so that you have approval to take on the debt. Council can provide greater direction later too.
But part of it for getting it on the ballot is we're going to have people coming back in March and gone from town for a while, won't have been here for all this communication. Our new communication person, and they're going to go in and they're going to look at the ballot, and that's what they're going to see. So if there's some way that we could reflect the great likelihood of $500,000 worth of this being given, that's a great thing to put in the ballot.
And a great thing for you, Cordova is one of the few communities that we learned is exempt from APOC, which means that without having to register and follow certain protocols, the city can heavily advocate for this proposal, both in writing and otherwise, for the voters. So that's hopefully that will help meet council's intentions.
So, Councilman Baylor, under discussion, I haven't heard a motion to amend. We could recess if we want to redraft this right now, or
I would suggest polling the rest of the council.
Member Meyer?
Councilman Meyer.
I have a question on timeline. Is this something that possibly could be sent back to staff and then brought to our November 4th meeting?
What did we say? Yeah, right? Why did we say we could?
I feel like
Can I ask what you would want brought back, Councilman Meyer, that you wouldn't want to change right now? You still have 7 councilmen that are going to want to see a revision or an amendment.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious if this is something that needs to be passed today to get on the ballot, to get staff going. I'm just curious about their timeline for it. Because it is language that's going to go on, be printed on the ballot.
Clerk?
I mean, I guess we could do it on the 21st or a special in between. Can I ask a question? Besides that?
With no objection, council?
We've done these loans with subsidies before. Did they read like this? Very similar to this, and they passed? They were understood by the voters?
Yeah, and this one has actually more information than in the past because we weren't aware of our exemption under under APOC until we asked that question of APOC. So we've been careful in the past not to sound like you're advocating via the question. This time,
And we are a little bit more this time.
are a little bit more because
did
we
they
could
all
give
pass?
them more guidance than we could in the past.
well, the only one I've been involved in is the LT2 loan.
LT2?
Yeah.
But we've done other ones, I think, and they've all passed, right? Do you recall?
I think the first LT2 loan also had a subsidy. The second one, the $3 million one, had a 1.1 million subsidy.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah.
Okay, so discussion on the main motion is amended.
Well, I've said my piece. I wouldn't sign a legal document if I wasn't very, very clear on it. So that's why I brought my objections. But if the rest of the council is good with it, it's up to them.
Okay, roll call vote.
So the main motion as amended to change it to the 1210. Jeff Gard.
So are we on approving the main motion?
Yes, this is...
Amend?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
What? Yes?
Yes, yay.
Ann Schaefer.
That's on the main motion.
Yes.
Melina Meyer.
Yes.
David Allison.
Yes.
David Gleason.
Yes.
Tom Baylor.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay. I think we do want the minutes to reflect that council wanted to clear that there's a substantial subsidy available here. Next item is Resolution 10-20-38, a resolution of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, approving the final plat for Yarborough subdivision.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion Baylor and second Schaefer. To your motion, Councilman Baylor?
I'll support it, and I did have a conversation with our city planner, and he said the planning commission kind of flushed this out very good, and we're kind of lucky to have somebody that had some surveying experience, so I will support it.
To your second, Councilman Schaefer.
I'm also in support.
Discussion, Councilman Gleason.
I'm in support.
Vice Mayor Meyer.
I'm also in support.
Councilman Ellison.
Ditto, I support.
Councilman Gard.
I'm in favor.
Sounds like you're ready for a roll call vote.
David Gleason.
Yes.
Melina Meyer.
Yes.
Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
Tom Baylor.
Yes.
David Allison.
Yes.
And Jeff Gard.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Council, the next item is a discussion of COVID-19 emergency response. Is there any discussion? Councilman Schaefer?
Just to clarify, so Helen, is Cordova, we are in line with the state with their recent changes to the travel mandate?
Correct.
And I guess I could have asked Dr. Sanders when she was online, but I'm sure our medical team has been consulted with going forward with that decision, or?
Yes, they're totally fine going in line with state. I will say that the emergency management team is now printing new posters and information so that the business community and the community at large has the latest information. So again, whenever there's a change, then we have some work to do, and we're doing that. The CDC is coming out with new guidelines as well, so who knows if there'll be additional changes. So at this moment in time, we're in line with state, and we'll see how long that lasts.
Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion, council, questions? Okay, hearing none. Pending agenda, capital improvement project list, and calendar.
I think I skipped the capital improvement list.
Yeah, we did have that capital improvement list in there.
Forgot to put it in this time.
Oh, I thought I saw it.
Oh, is it?
No, you did it earlier. There was a list from the
I know.
planning department.
Oh, yeah.
I started a new procedure and then I forgot that I started the new procedure.
Okay.
Oh,
Councilman Baylor.
I guess it seems like we need to identify what substantial interest is. Also, it sounds like there's interest in seeing how we can move forward with the E911 system. So
Yeah.
maybe there's a reason it's not there, and staff can give us a report next meeting or what's going on, but I think that's probably of interest to everybody.
Okay. Yeah, the city council's last CIP list is here on 170, right?
Oh,
Susan?
forgot. Yes, please do.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Sorry, go ahead.
On page 170, that was our last
you put it in.
CIP list, right?
Oh, I put it in.
I don't want you to get a demerit.
Thank you for giving me an A. I did put it in. So
Okay,
we
so E911,
put it on pending agenda or for a report? Is that?
staff report?
Well, nobody knows where it's at, so I guess
Yeah.
we'd have to find out why it has been implemented and information, and maybe there's a reason, so. You may have not even had time to look at it.
We actually, if I can just quickly address, and I can have Paul Tremblay bring that forward, but we did look at the possibility of funding it through our CARES Act funds, but it wasn't considered a legitimate expense because it had already been budgeted. It's around a $300,000 project, just so you know. So we'll bring that information to the next council meeting.
Yeah, and as Councilman Meyer,
And
Councilman Guard.
I just have a question for Bertie. $300,000 for the whole 911 thing. The addressing, though, is only 75 grand or so, isn't it?
I don't have that information, but we'll certainly have it for the next council meeting.
Yeah. So we'll put it on pending agenda for a staff report.
It's listed as B3, sort of.
Oh,
Yeah. So that was referred clear back to 2018.
Yeah. And I think at that time is when the state was discussing doing a statewide addressing thing, which is why we had deferred it.
We have Mr. Tremblay right here.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that is
I mean, they
coming
don't
from. I
have
think
any
it was a
funding.
different system, like the
Oh.
LMR system that the state runs. But this is stemming back 30 years. You know, we've brought this forward many times in the last 30 years. We've even brought in professionals to discuss E911 and possible financing. And for whatever reason, council stuck on addressing. And addressing has nothing to do with starting E911. So I don't know. I don't know where council's stuck at.
Well, that's why I asked to put it on the agenda.
So yeah, let's put it on pending agenda and we'll pick it up.
I don't know. I mean, we've since I've been in this position, I've brought this forward 4 times. So.
Okay.
I don't know where to start.
Councilman Allison.
Yeah, the last where it got stuck, all is, with all due respect, is we had the committee meeting and we had the professional come down, the consultant come down and talk to us, and his recommendation was the next step was to do the addressing. Until the addressing is done, nothing else should be done or could be done. And that is, I agree with you, that's been at least 4 city managers ago that was discussed, and it's been brought by council to at least 4 managers that we need to get the addressing done. Money's there, let's get the addressing done. It just hasn't been done. I take exception to putting the blame on council for that. Council has, maybe the blame is council hasn't been forceful enough with our managers. But it's in the manager's hands, the money's there, let's get it done.
Okay. Well, that's where it's at. Pending agenda. We'll wrap it up and pick it up next meeting or future meeting.
I was going to suggest or see what Holly thought about maybe in the November 4th meeting, thinking about extending our emergency or at least having to decide what to do before the November 15th deadline.
Yeah.
I think, and all we really need to do, what I would recommend you do is just get off the timeline with the state. We just need to, you already have a local, you have declared a local emergency separate and distinct from the state. We just, after council was doing emergency ordinance after emergency ordinance, we aligned ourselves with the state. So we just need to
Just change
that out.
the timeline to what the council, change the timeline to what the council wants, so that if the state does drop theirs on November 15th, the councils would extend if they wanted to.
And one of the main reasons is funding, not just the CARES Act. We all focus on the CARES Act. There are a lot of funds out there that literally require, very first and foremost, that you have declared a local emergency, and they allow a state emergency declaration to substitute in for that declaration of a local emergency. So once we lose the state emergency, you're really going to need, if you're not going to extend your local emergency, I just want to make sure you understand potential consequences. So we'll bring that back. That's an excellent point.
Okay, so we need that on the November 4th agenda.
Yes.
Okay.
And then somebody had mentioned the ferry vessels being liquidated. So what do you want? Do you want just put it on pending agenda or?
Yeah, I think so, maybe for discussion or some kind of council direction, I guess. I don't know, or what's the will of council?
Can't afford it.
Oh, the city can't, but.
For a letter we're putting into the state about liquidation of state vessels.
Yeah, we've communicated our interest to the state.
But we did it in an official letter, so.
I don't think so. I think.
Again, have legal official for it.
I don't hear what he's saying.
We're going to lose our staff here. Let's pending agenda and move on.
For Mr. Mayor, I got not a pending agenda, but just a reminder. Did have a report from Bert, and it worked out good. Just a really long meeting, but just a reminder to maybe have him on for next meeting.
Okay, NBE.
Yeah, at this point, we're waiting for them to get to a place where they're comfortable bringing forth a presentation. I think they just had elections and they want to bring up their new officers up to speed, so they don't feel they're ready for anything yet, and we'll wait for that. I think Greg Meyer has been in communication with NBE and Bert, and maybe we can get a report from him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Okay, so anything else for pending agenda? Okay, hearing none. Again, the audience participation number is 253-6202. So if there's any audience comments, that number again is 253-6202. And while we're waiting for public calls, we can go through council comments. And we'll start with David Allison, Councilman Allison.
I don't have any other comments. Thank you.
Councilman Schaefer.
Thanks to staff for all the quarterly reports, and it was good to see all your faces in person. Thank you.
Councilman Gleason.
Yeah, same. Thanks to staff, especially Sam and Aaron for comments on the equipment stuff. Have a good night.
Councilman Meyer.
Yeah, same lines. Thank you to staff. It was a pretty heavy packet, a lot of things, pairing up with some state officials that were able to join us for a long part of our meeting, so really appreciated them and those that others and doing contact with them to get them to talk with. That's really nice. I also just wanted to kind of mention that it's nice to see the recovered cases that we have. You know, sometimes we just focus on the number and the active cases, or being better about what we're doing. But I'm really happy to see that those cases have been recovered, and only the best for anybody who tests positive for COVID or learned about it. Just really happy to see them recovered. And even though we ask questions here on council, I do want to acknowledge the human aspect of it, and nothing is directed to those blood test positive. So, and hope that the active cases that they're all doing well and recover quickly. Thank you.
Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, thanks to the Public Works Department there, and who identified the grant, $500,000 on a loan payment to be deducted. That's huge. So thanks for looking into that, saving the city money, and moving forward. We do need equipment. Also, I had the opportunity several times to be going into Ace Hardware and saw the city crew working on a water line there, right there on the corner. And I know the mayor could appreciate this. They opened up a big hole, and there was a lot of lines and other stuff there, and they did an excellent job. They got the job done. They didn't do any damage. They were very professional around there. They had probably the best protection fencing on a job that I've ever seen. So kudos to them. And, just they did that with that new machine too. So it's people question us why sometimes we buy stuff, but great job for those guys. They replaced the cast iron water line that had been leaking and then eventually broke. So good for them. On the Proposition 1 there on the general obligation landfill equipment upgrades, I guess, first of all, I'd appreciate if the clerk could send me the revised edition with the proper amount, just that, not that whole packet again, please.
Okay.
And then I would suggest a new communications director or whoever your position is there. I would love if you took the revised one and just went out and handed it to some strangers and people and say, well, when you read this, what do you see? And get their reaction as far as, are they paying 1.1, over $1 million, or do they understand the deduction? So that would be interesting. And thanks to everybody here. Thank you.
And Councilman Guard.
I'd like to staff for other this was quite a pile of work we had sitting in front of us this night, mostly on their end. We just had to say yes and no. And I did have one question to backtrack. And I'm not saying in an argumentative manner or not, but I just want to be clear on whether we got a letter to the state on liquidating ferries or not. If we just called in and said, hey, we don't want to.
I don't think we got a letter on letterhead to the administration saying that we were interested in the ferries if they liquidated them. I think we sent emails to Chief of Staff and Captain Falvey.
I think what we'd actually talked about was not saying that we wanted to send them a letter.
Yes.
Saying we were interested in them if they got rid of them. We were saying that we wanted them to not get rid of them until we figured out what we needed to do if they were getting rid of them.
And I don't recall if we did. We'll go back through correspondence. If we didn't, we can get one out. But this is the second time they've posted those for some kind of sale. So Okay, next item on the agenda is executive session. The potential item is a case update and settlement discussion for the Beecher litigation. So what's the will of council?
I move we go into executive session for a case update and settlement discussion for Beecher litigation because it is a matter the immediate knowledge of which would clearly have an adverse effect upon the finances of the government.
Second.
So we have a motion, a second. So we'll take a short recess to clear the room and
To do
to,
no objection first, so that we can just go right in.
yeah, with no objection.
Is that approved, I mean, or do you want me to take a roll call on the?
Oh, yeah. All those in favor of executive session, roll call, please.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
David Gleason. On going into the executive session, David Gleason? David Allison?
Yes.
Ann Schaefer?
Yes.
And Tom Baylor?
Yes.
So motion carries 5-0, and then we'll.
Okay, so we'll take a short recess to clear the room and then council can call back in.
Did anybody in the room want to comment? No, 'cause we did audience participation, but they
We
wouldn't.
have another, you're gonna text us another